coming out, right? It's your pure truth. And I will make a promise. I gotta order your book, read it, and then I will contact you for an episode on further stuff. So I'm not ignorant.
There's 4 books.
I know, but I got to do one at a time, right?
One book, just to let you know what you're getting yourself in for. One book is a book of footnotes.
Right, that's building it up. Like that's what I'm saying. I got to just work through the footnotes first.
Somebody in the chat room says, I picked the wrong night to go out for Mexican food. Yeah, I was a mood killer for Mexican food. I don't know if you guys can see it. I saw that. I had to laugh. Somebody says this was the wrong night for Mexican food.
It's a spicy. It's a spicy.
I think
Farrell's rant is over, folks.
All right, so to most recent work, you guys did the NIMSA conference out there, and Walter, behind you, you have one of the sketches and drawings of, is it Dalshao or?
Dalshao, yeah. And now this is one of the ones that, look at that. What does that, now that's a cutaway, so imagine it not cut away. What does that look like to you? That looks like the flying saucer from the Forbidden Planet movie. It looks like a classic flying saucer with a bell on top.
Oh, my word. You're right.
Yeah. And that was drawn by Charles Dalshao sometime between 1890 and 1923.
Holy cow. I never noticed that.
That's why this man was not just an outsider artist.
I suspect the white, the red, and the blue. The red and the blue are like electromagnet fields, like alternating things, and the white is like a neutral or something like that.
Isn't that interesting? Because we had an attendee at the conference, Michael Dark, who was in here earlier, and he asked the same thing. If the stripage wasn't that they painted them festively, was if the stripage on all the things is trying to give a message of what's going on with the electromagnetics.
Yep.
So now you're someone who comes from a scientific, both of you, are saying that, that makes sense to you. So,
well, somebody pointed out during that conference, Walter, that those lines and so on may have been field lines. I forget who it was.
That was Michael Dark.
Yeah. I think that's a good
maybe
point.
Matt.
Yeah.
Indeed. Now,
now we have
Jeremiah's posting something really interesting.
So here we go. I'm going to tell you exactly how this works. And this is a physics concept. This physics concept exists now in the modern day architecture and in the equations. And this physics concept has to do with the relativistic frame dragging and the phase from relative frames of reference. So in the center, we're looking at the blue dot. The blue dot is an electron. And we're going to go ahead. Let me grab my pencil. Let's see. Actually, where is my pencil? Give me a second. Let me find
Excuse me, folks. I have to answer a call of nature. I'll be right back.
Here we go.
No worries.
Maybe I should wait for him to answer his call.
Call of nature. He's running to the bathroom, I do suspect and believe. And so what got me originally suspecting on what Walter has behind him here and the field lines, the white, the red, and the blue, is in my electrolysis reactions, my alchemy experiments, that especially with copper coils, that I would have both red and blue mono, or I guess it's like di or triatomic, but like these little nano materials, oxide, so it'd be copper oxide and hydroxide, that would coat the coils on, or this, like on the rotation, the circle. On one half it would turn like blue oxidized, on the other half it would turn red hydroxide. And it's like the electromagnetic field half turns to this blue chemical reaction, half turns to this red chemical reaction, and that there's like a white decay in between the two. And then tying it into how the alchemists were talking about these colored states of metals, and that they're these transmutational states of metal, and that sorry, there's so much all at once to include into that, what I'm trying to say, but that they're the metamaterials, that now we're seeing this red state metal is like this high superconductive or high energy state potentially they're coming out with, that there's the superconducting cold states and the nanotechnology, the lattice structure, nano layering, and all of this for their superconductors and whatnot. It seems like there was a very super high advanced ancient alchemy science that they got it, they understood it, and it came from most likely a demigod or root creator civilization that we barely understand or has been suppressed, that's in mystery schools. Not entirely sure.
I do suspect and think that the Sonora Aero Club was the beneficiary, the recipient, what have you, the heir of some type of very old knowledge. Now, tracing the origin of that knowledge, one could say, well, it wouldn't be a shock to learn that some advanced technological civilization came to this world and this was theirs that they left behind. Or let's not assume that humanity is unable to come up with things and understand things and develop things on their own. Whatever your inclination is, I do think that Peter Menace, for example, of the Sonora Aero Club, had learned something that yes, had been passed down from a long time ago, a lost technology, because the cycles of civilizations coming and going and the various dark ages. Right?
Yeah. So it doesn't have to all be like necessarily alien or anything like that. God. And that's what I wonder. And I have to bring this up. The pre-cataclysm, the Younger Dryas event, the story of Atlantis pre-12,000 years ago, but that we also recognize the megafauna of the Younger Dryas, and that there were these giant beavers, giant mammoths, giant, pretty much everything you can think of, whether it was mammal, reptile, insect, everything. There was much gianter. So why weren't, or could there have been giant humans at that time too?
Well, that's an interesting speculation, because I don't know if you're aware of it, BurnEye. I don't know if you've seen those Sumerian cylinder seals, where you'll see a big guy sitting down, and then you'll see these very small little humanoid creatures bringing, gifts or whatever. And the way the academics explain this is that the big guy on the chair or on the throne is the Megal, the Megalal or something. I forget what their Lugal is the big man, which is their word for king. So the academics are saying, oh, this is just their way of portraying the king. But the actual word is big man. So in other words, why, I think the cylinder seal is telling you that, why not big humans or humanoid people, and, they're little people. I think that's absolute possibility. Right. And the texts talk about giants all the time anyway.
Yeah. Right, because I want to tie it into, and my ignorance because I haven't read it, but the Old Testament, and they said there were giants in those days, and that giants we were created from God. So it's like, were we like, did giants genetically make us smaller and out of some primate or hominid or something? And like, was
most people think it's the other way around. Most people think that the giants that are referred to in the Old Testament, the most famous example is Og, the king of Bashan. And if you look at the measurements given in the Old Testament for his bed, the guy would have been about 9 feet tall. So in other words, he was very, very tall, a giant. Most people think that the giants are the result of that the Nephilim, the sons of God, coming down and genetically engineering mankind, and that the giants were the result. I tend to that view, but I'm not entirely sold on it. But it may have been the other way around. Maybe humanity originated on another planet and with a much higher gravity, and we were taller, you know. But the other problem here is we're not really able to look at the genetic environmental factors of what's going on. We today, you and I, Walter, Exotic Propulsion, we're all on average much taller than maybe our grandparents or great grandparents.
Yeah.
I think it's by about 6 or 7 inches by now. We're on average much taller. So, you know, who knows? A lot of that's our food supply, but it's got a lot of other things.
When you look at clothes from a couple centuries ago too, I mean, even 100 and something years ago, you go, wow, did these shrink, you know, or were they tiny? I think Jeremiah still, he held off on explaining what he was showing while you were gone, Joseph.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He would like to go
quickly
back
before we get to Jeremiah's part. I'm just going to end off with what fascinates me.
But somebody, BurnEye, did a genetic DNA analysis of some of those elongated skulls in Peru. Now, I don't know what the results of them were.
I believe it was Brian Forrester that's
that's familiar. Yeah, I don't remember what the results were. And I had heard, but I don't know if it was ever confirmed that supposedly they were literally 50% identical to human and then 50% genetic that's completely unknown to like the Earth genome sequence. That it was either that of the elongated skull or that was from what Lloyd Pye had dubbed his Star Child skull. I forget if it was. I don't recall anything ever connecting whatever results were to Neanderthals. So I don't know what the results were, but
so what I'm speculating is, could they have like called or labeled Neanderthals to the elongated skull, and that would be fascinating. And we have to try to source some sort of reliable genetic sequencing of an actual elongated skull sample to get the truth out of it, to make sure it's not, because the main thing I hear from so many people that deal with them is every lab, no place will accept testing a sample of their genetic material for some reason. Like they just refuse to touch it.
I can believe that. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, is it because to claim like that, we took over Neanderthals and that we have a little portion of it in us, as like explaining a way that they were the Nephilim or some demigod or some mix of genetics coming into us?
I personally, if you're asking me what I think they are doing it because they're trying to suppress any open speculation on whatever the results might be. And they certainly don't want anybody speculating along lines of Atlantis or Nephilim or Anunnaki or any of that stuff.
Because I'm just speculating questions. You're putting ideas out. What is your general feeling of like the genetic sequence of humans? Like, was it evolution? Was there a spot where we had something come in, like the Rh negative blood? Was our genetics tampered with?
I'm not an evolutionist. I'll be right up front. I'm not an evolutionist. I think that theory is so much hogwash. The problem with evolutionary theory is the standard Darwinian model of microevolution totaling up to speciation, an absolute change of one species into another. There has never been any way to prove this, and they finally gave up on the missing link and started talking about spontaneous emergence. Well, that's just a fancy evolution way of saying special creation, although they don't want to go there, because they're a bunch of materialists and can't think straight. I don't have any problem with the idea that life forms on this earth may have been affected by biological material coming from outer space. Case in point, the octopus. I mean, this is a mightily strange creature. And they're smart, how do you explain those dang things? The evolutionary taxonomy is so convoluted, and I have yet to read any evolutionary explanation of the origin of and what evolutionary purpose. All do I think that plasma may be a higher hyperdimensional life form? Yes, because if you understand plasmas to be an electromagnetic phenomenon, which most of them are, then to describe the phenomenon, you must perforce use imaginary numbers. Once you say that, you are already in the hyperdimensional sphere. Okay? I think you could go much further than that, but that's the bottom line. I think, yes, if you grant the hypothesis, and it's only a hypothesis, that some of them might be alive, and then some of them out of that might be conscious. Yeah. Are they hyperdimensional? Yeah. Yeah. I don't see how you can have a structure like the Great Sloan Wall, which is this gigantic plasma filament structure, septillions of miles long. Well, under general relativity, how does that kind of structure even cohere? For that matter, how does the structure of the Milky Way cohere? If there can be no information transfer faster than the velocity of light, how come we have a structure called the Milky Way galaxy that's 430,000 light years across? Now, I know they'll come up with all sorts of fancy.
I want to point out now why you're right. So you can't have this structure without a faster than velocity of light transfer of signal fidelity.
Because I mean, gravity is acting and moving faster than light. It would have to be. Gravity would have to be faster than light. It would have to be instantaneous from one corner one side of the Milky Way to the other side of the Milky Way for it to be cohering altogether on itself. It has to be faster than the speed of light, essentially.
It does. You're absolutely, and that's exactly his point. That's exactly your point. It does. It has to be faster than light in order to have the same signature of motion that we observe from external galaxies and from our own, in order to provide the same exact dynamics, the same exact rotation velocity. It has to be a faster than velocity c. Hence why we have this issue with galaxies that seem to be rotating faster. And this is where you get your errors from dark matter and dark energy, right? Because we see the galaxies are rotating faster based on their diameter and what we predict they should have gravitationally from the amount of matter that we can observe. There has to be a faster than c signal, a superluminal communication, in order for the field forces to communicate and produce this exact geometry at the rotational velocity that it has. Must be. It's a requirement of the universe. So he's right. And what I want to point out is...
All right, let Joseph speak.
We don't have this explanation. But in the new paradigm of what we're looking at with a variable epsilon and mu, we have an explanation, and I can answer...
Jeremiah, let him speak.
Time out. I got to go pretty quick, guys, and I understood somebody.
We're 2.5 hours in,
and I think Walter is about ready to choke me. But
no, it's BurnEye. It's BurnEye's show. I'm a guest.
Oh,
it's our show. It's all
even worse.
Even better. No, it's an honor, Joseph. You gave me such a compliment by saying I have a first-rate brain for you to say that to me.
Well, it's true. If you would just not fill it with so much bubblegum internet crap.
He says the same thing to me, BurnEye.
I say that. Listen, you think I'm being bad to you? You should have seen me as a professor.
Not at all. No, I love it.